Hi, welcome back for my second video. I picked up a couple of subscribers after my last one, so thank you for that. My second project is also a present for a friend. This time I'm making a couple of photo frames to go with some objects that I want to put in them. So they're more shadow boxes than photo frames. It's a term I only learnt recently. I went to stay with some friends in November and stayed in their spare room, and they had a couple of about A3 size pictures on the walls of one of an ammonite and one of an anemone in textured paper. And I thought, well, I have an anemone and I can go and find an ammonite, and I thought it might be nice if I could mount the actual objects in some small frames and give them to my friends as a gift so they can display them alongside the pictures of the objects. I had most of the parts I need already, so it was a sensible project to carry on with. I have a little bit of perspex for the front of the frame. I have the anemone. The ammonite, I actually went all the way to Yorkshire to do some fossil hunting with a friend, and it's quite a nice specimen. It's a relief. It's not the original ammonite, it's an imprint of, but it's got a nice gold sheen to it. So some minerals have got in and made it quite pleasing. To mount the object, I've had a little bit of a play around already. That's a bit of a challenge in itself. I've come across some things called mitre mounts, which you put through a backing, and the little plastic clips which clip on. They're visible in view though, because they come over the edge of the object. So another idea I came across, there's a guy, I think he's called Jim Miller in the States, who does some photo mounting, and he suggested this framed rod method, whereby he takes some wire and he makes like a plate hook device with a hook on each side, two of those, fits them together, attaches them in the middle out of some quite firm wire, and then attaches that to a backing. Once again, it's visible in shot, so I had an idea that I could tie my wire. This is jewellery wire. It's about 0.6 mil, but it's similar to either floristry wire or the framing wire. And I've twisted it tight, two strips, twisted it tight on the side with a pair of pliers. And I'm hoping I can pop these through a backing. For the anemone, which has got a hole in the back, I've used the same wire, taken a 2-inch strip, halved it, twisted it, bent it over to make a hook, and then hopefully I should be able to put that through backing, spread the two wires and glue it down so it doesn't twist. And if I do 3 of those at thirds or 4, it should hopefully hold the anemone. I need to make sure that it's very secure because the frame will be sealed, so I don't want it coming off if the frame is moved around. Whilst browsing in the craft shop, I came across some foam which I thought would serve well as the first backing, so the objects will get pulled into it slightly as the wire goes through. On the front of that, I'll put a couple of more traditional white cardboard mounts with a window cut in. I'll do 2 of those. And on the back, a piece of 3mm ply. Finally, I have some gummed paper to stick over the edges where the ply joins the frame at the back, so that no dust gets in. The actual frame size themselves will be made of 41mm pine. This, I believe, was a spindle from a staircase. I have 4 of those. I've made myself a plan and a diagram. I made a diagram for my last project but didn't show it. I've done this on the computer in a modelling package. Not only does it help me check all the measurements, it also means that I can test my plan for the mounting On my plan I've written all my dimensions, check that they all work out. Prep, a couple of things to test out. I have some tools that I'm using that I've not used before. To cut the mitres on the frame, I'm going to use a mitre saw. This was kindly given to me by a friend. It was her late husband's, who was another friend of mine, and I hope to make good use of that. To run the rebate in from the back of the timber, one method would be to make grooves for the perspex and the plywood with my plough plane. But my Christmas present, which was quite exciting, was a Makita router. The smallest router bit I have is 4.5mm, so I can't cut grooves because my perspex is 2mm and my plywood is 3mm. So I'm planning, as per my diagram, to cut one continuous rebate, mount all my pieces in, the perspex at the front, the mount and the ply at the back, and put some spacers, some thin 6mm strips of pine, glue them to the side, and they'll hold everything in place. So first things first, I'm going to cut my mitered edges. I have my mitre saw here, so I'm going to clamp it to the bench. I'm back in my own workshop today, which is actually a corner of my kitchen. It's all the space I have, but it works just fine for now. I'm also going to clamp my pieces to the saw. Put a scrap wood in to protect the working piece. And we're good to go. First one. I have 2 frames, that's 4 pieces of timber on each one, 8 in total, which makes 16 mitre cuts. So I may be here some time, as the blade isn't that sharp. For each piece, which I will do on all the other pieces, I need to mark my face mark and my edge on the inside. The pieces of timber are 250mm on my diagram, so I'll measure in from the end. Bit of an awkward workspace, but I would move this out of the way. I'm just demoing. Take my combination square and always from the face edge so I want my butt against here. I'll put my pencil on the mark, slide up and draw my line. Same from the other side, pencil on the mark, slide up, draw my line, and I can put this in my mitre saw and finish cutting the first piece. That's the first piece. It's just occurred to me that since the cuts are quite clean, as long as the back of my piece of timber is good enough, I don't have to do 16 cuts because that can be the first of the next one. So someone else can do the maths to work out the total. I'm not worried about the markings on because I'm going to plane the finish and that'll take the edges off. So if there's writing on the back, that doesn't matter. It's important that all the pieces of timber are completely identical in length so that when I make the frame it's square, otherwise the plywood and the perspex won't fit in properly. Neither will the joints be flush. So every time I start a saw cut, I'm checking against my line a little bit to start and checking that the left hand edge of the curve of the blade is against the pencil line and the rest of the blade is cutting on the waist side of the line. Because I've not used the saw before and I've not made a photo frame before either, I want to check that what I'm doing is going to work before I carry on any further. So to check that the cuts are 45, because I'm only trusting the gradings on here, I can put the first two together, just line them up with my finger at the end, combination square out to the end so I can do a square edge with it. Put it on there, hold these closed, slide that up, and it's pretty spot on actually, much better than I thought, 90 degrees. And if I pick up this, very flush edges, so that'll do me, I'm happy to carry on. This piece of timber has a couple of imperfections in it, a couple of knots and a little groove, so I want to make sure that those won't be seen. So I want this to the back and those to the inside, so this side and this side will be seen. So I've marked my face side on the front and my edge to the inner face. I'll then cut my mitres in this way, so I'll mark my waist, and then the second one will be the other way. I've got all my 8 pieces cut now. It took about an hour and a quarter to cut all 8, which isn't quick. I think I need a sharper blade. It would obviously be much quicker on a chop saw, but I don't have one and I want to build up my skills with hand tools until maybe further down the line I choose which power tools to use. I'm just going to, handy little old toothbrush, just going to get rid of the dust off the end and check they all fit together and that they're all the same size. If any are too long or too short, it won't make a good square, so I can cut a replacement if needs be. And then I can roughly fit them. I'm just going to write A and B on the ends. So this is piece A. And frame B. So if I just try assemble them, let's see if it looks roughly square on the inside. There's just one that's a little out, the other 3 are pretty flush. Just try an alternative piece, see if it's gives a pretty good finish. I've been through all the pieces for the bottom, found one that's a very good match, so I've relabelled it B, and those will be the pieces for my first frame. I can just check the others. Okay, next I will use my router for the first time, and router table, and put my rebate in. I could have done the rebate first and then the mitres. I had to think about whether it would work either way, whether there was a reason for or against. I couldn't think of any good reason. I've decided to do it this way. Just seemed to make sense to make the frame first, and also with my space being quite confined, the small pieces would be quite practical on the table.